Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Rob Gunnison, who began teaching here in the mid-1990s and working here full-time in 1999. To call him the faculty speaker is not quite precise. Technically, he is not faculty, although he teaches a lot. More accurately, he does everything around here. He is an all-star, a true team player. Rob will be retiring in the fall. We are in the final stages, as many of you know, of picking a new dean for this school. That is hard enough, but finding a replacement for Rob will be really hard. Rob?
Thank you for coming today, and thank you, Tom, for reasons only you really know. Our school has a reputation for running the best graduation ceremony in the business. Our motto is, we keep it short. I will try to maintain that tradition. We are here today to see a member of your family or a loved one graduate, and we know each one is special. A few years ago, back when journalism recruiters still roamed the earth, one told me that he never saw students anywhere else like the ones at Berkeley. I would like you to know more about what is special about Berkeley and the students at Northgate. Back in 2009, we received 408 applications, the largest number ever received. The 47 graduates sitting here are the survivors. As an old reporter, I get excited looking in files. So I went to our files and read the application statements of students who were accepted and was reminded how special our students are. I'd like to share a few of those statements with you. And by the way, the students I'm quoting said I could do this. For every one I read, there are many more equally compelling that I could have chosen. Some are about growing up. The writing can stop you in your tracks. In his statement, Hunter Holcomb wrote, "In our one-room home was Spartan. I slept in a corner, my parents in another. But I had fresh air and a forest for a playground. My father was a carpenter. My mother worked with disabled children, and I split firewood constantly for fuel. It was a life you find thrilling at 10, embarrassing through 17, and then cherish fiercely for the rest of your life." Emily Bender wrote about growing up in the farm town of Flora, Illinois. "As long as I can remember, I always wanted to know what else was out there. At 16, I began exploring past the county line. Curiosity drove me deep along curvy roads where oncomers stared suspiciously rather than waving with familiarity. After school, I would drive with my 3 best girlfriends, several bottles of Boone's Strawberry Hill, and a few packs of Marlboro Mediums to these newly discovered corners of the county." Faye Abu El-Ghassim recalls this: "Growing up in Sudan, I, as a female, was supposed to be silent, have no voice, and certainly not an opinion. However, my parents did not follow those oppressive traditions of silence and raised me to become a vocal woman. I was lucky, but many in my country are not." Ashley Hopkinson remembers her family moving from Alabama to Guyana. "I was an 11-year-old American with a Southern accent who struggled to fit into her own culture. At times, the process was slow and unforgiving, but I resolved to forge ahead. My first major hurdle was trying to understand the strict and regimented culture in contrast to the free-spirited society I had grown accustomed to. In America, I was encouraged to speak my mind. In Guyana, I was taught to know my place." One of the things we look for in students is commitment to journalism. We want to make sure this isn't a passing fancy, and the statements make the case with passion and eloquence. Christine Maidu: "Much to my parents' dismay, I had my heart set not on one of the diasporic triumvirate of career paths, med school, law school, or engineering, but on journalism. I never let on that my choice was inspired in part by their life story. From the day my mother came to speak to my class about her refugee experiences, clutching the thin black pajama suit she'd worn on the boat, while my classmates listened in tearful silence, I understood the power of storytelling. Laith Aga, even if I'm reporting on something that lacks intrigue, I take that as a challenge to make the article an interesting read. While I performed satisfactorily in my previous career, real estate development did not resonate with my conscience. Ann Bryce. In the first grade, I was a journalist in the making. My teacher, Debbie Green, had decided to show us how to make our own books. And from then on, I could not have stopped writing if I tried. Punctuation was a new concept with which I freely experimented. And no personal experience was off limits or too small. From a fight between my parents to a salamander my brother found, I documented the world as I saw it. Julia Chan worked in television news in Flint, Michigan. She started work at 4 in the morning and couldn't get enough of it. Because I had to work weekends, I never attended a single college football game, something unheard of at a school like the University of Michigan. Julia finally did attend a game, but only after she graduated and only after she found someone to cover her shift. Some of the statements have powerful scenes. Patty Espinoza grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. I used to spend the weekdays in Texas studying at Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Church, and my weekends were usually spent crossing the border into Reynosa, Tamaulipas to visit my grandparents. Reynosa is not a beautiful area of Mexico like Cabo San Lucas or San Miguel de Allende. It is an impoverished city crawling with homeless children and unemployed parents. It was there I got my first look at the real world at age 5. Carl Nassman gave up a job in New York as a sportscaster to teach radio as a volunteer in a city in Honduras, a city that Carl says does not exist according to the Lonely Planet. As my first radio class progressed, we began to discuss the issues my students faced in El Progreso. They told me that the city has the highest per capita rate of HIV in Central America. Teacher strikes had eliminated half of the previous school year. Corruption was crippling the country's government, and a tropical storm had flooded the nearby river, forcing thousands out of their homes and into makeshift tents along the highway. So we got to work making radio. At this juncture, it might be time to say something about the future of journalism, but here too, the students have the answers. In his statement, David Ferry wrote, "Times are tough, but the way I see it, with all the vastly talented individuals going into law and marketing and business, someone's got to keep an eye on them." And Laura Hautala recalled an editor who said this, "This is Laura, who's pursuing a career in journalism. If that isn't just the triumph of hope over reason." Thanks to the class of 2012, we have a reason to hope. Thank you. It's been a privilege.